Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Brendan here, aka Cliff Jumper, and today we are updating our Corrado with a more modern Bluetooth stereo that is still going to look factory correct. So keep with us and we'll get into it. Now you might look at first glance and say, but you already have a modern Bluetooth radio. Yes, Bluetooth. And it does all the things. And this radio, to be fair, this was the radio of choice for a very long time, but it is no longer produced. And as we have discovered, with age, it develops overheating issues. Corrados run hot. VR6s run even hotter than a regular Corrado G60, and this cannot handle the heat. So I've run into the problem where after about 20-25 minutes of driving, it freaks out and it reboots and resets itself to factory conditions. And that is just kind of part and parcel. This likes a nice, cool environment. So anyway, we are moving on. This has served us faithfully. We are going to be replacing it with the Blaupunkt Milano, which is, I think it's the 200 BT model. It has Bluetooth. It actually does have a CD deck in it too, for those weirdos like us that like to play CDs every once in a while. And we're gonna give it a whirl. So I'm gonna walk us through installing it. If you have a factory tape deck or CD deck in your Corrado, it's going to be the exact same procedure because this uses all the factory stuff. So let's show you how to get it out and get the new one in. First off, you're going to need radio removal tools. You can get these for a couple bucks on Amazon. And what you're going to want to do is, if they have the little hook, you're going to put the hook side in to the holes on the outside of the deck. Push them in just a little bit, angle it out, and boom, this will slide right out. Factory stereo comes out the same way. Then on the back side, we're going to need to unplug a few things to get this free. So I'm going to drop the camera for a moment and manually do that with both hands so I don't ruin anything. So just squeeze the clip and wiggle a little bit, and that comes free. That comes free, and our antenna comes free, and this is free and clear. The Blaupunkt radio does not have the exact same sort of mounting. It actually does require a collar, so we're going to have to put this collar in place. So I'm going to put the wiring through the collar, make sure that that is accessible, free and clear. Collar goes into this lovely spot here, and then there are pins that we will bend down to hold the collar in place so the radio can then slide in. But before we do all that, we are going to test it for function. So we've got these extender harnesses in here. The Blaupunkt kit actually comes with a set of extenders as well, and a very stern warning in the instructions: do not plug this into the original factory harness. I have already put an extension harness because the original one didn't stick out this far and it was a real pain to work with. So we should be able to plug this in. Ignore this wire hanging out. This is the illumination wire that is no longer going to serve any purpose because I can control the illumination inside here. So this will, let's do the power one first. Power and speakers. So with those plugged in, and then the antenna. This does have preamp outs, which I may take advantage of later, but not just yet. So I'm just going to tuck this stuff back in briefly, not permanently, just to get an idea of whether or not we actually have good function. And all that's going to need to tuck back in there. Oh yeah, also we want the locating knob, so that just screws on there, so it will sit in the back in its nice little hole Again, I'm not going to do a permanent install. I'm just going to slide it in and do a rough fit here. And we're going to check it for function before I lock it in place into the collar. So let's see if we've got function. We've got life. I'm gonna go old school here. Throw in a CD. And I'll probably have to mute the audio here in just a second because YouTube and copyright. One push on this is mute, which is great. So we do have functional audio. I'm going to go around and just make sure all the speakers are actually functional, and then we'll do adjustments, but we do have function on the system. So right now I'm coming back to the Blaupunkt Bluetooth stereo install, and now that it's daytime, you can see it fits beautifully in the Corrado dash. It's I do notice that it's a little wiggly because it's in the bracket that holds in there. You know, it doesn't use the exact same mounting system as the factory unit, but it is nice and flush, and it fits the look. It does have some weird, we'll call it quirks and features. So just going to give you the heads up on some things that might be a possibility with yours. I'm still trying to work out the bugs on this one to see if this is just how it works or if there's an issue with mine. Now, what I'm experiencing is when I turn on the vehicle, it loses all of its radio saving. All the stations are lost, and it defaults to whatever. I'll just hit mute. And it always comes back up on the radio. So even if I have used, all right, unmute it. Oh, that's interesting. There we go. Yeah, a little quirky here. So even if I have it saved on the Bluetooth streaming, which it is saved right here, and it should start coming up with my phone. There we go. I'm gonna mute it again because, you know, YouTube and copyright and all that. It is synced to my phone. So it's got connection from the phone. It's happy with the phone. It works. It's not losing its memory. It's remembering the phone. But every time I turn the vehicle off, it stops playing the phone. Yes, goodbye. So it does its little goodbye thing. Turn it back on, and it's going to come back on with the radio instead of the Bluetooth. And it's coming back to whatever this channel 5 is. It seems to be the default. So, but noticing if I unmute it, it doesn't remember my other stations. So it remembers one station for whatever reason. It doesn't remember the others. I don't know why that is. And I'm having a heck of a time trying to find Blaupunkt tech support to ask them about this. If it's something that's expected behavior, if there's something wrong with mine that I just happened to get, or what the deal is. But I'd like to figure that out first before I do anything else, because my ultimate plan is, you may notice it has red backlight here, and then this is white. The white doesn't bother me at all. It's actually pretty subtle at night. By the way, there is no illumination dimming on this. It is just the same dimness or brightness at all times. So it's unlike some other head units where you could use your factory dimmer setting to adjust where it's at. And in this, I'm noticing that the red doesn't bother me too much, but all the rest of the illumination in the Corrado is green if you've got the factory illumination, and I would like it to match. So Matthew Litke has offered to take a crack at changing out the LEDs to green and see if that is possible on this, or how easy it may or may not be. But I'm not going to take that step unless I can get the bugs worked out on this to decide whether or not I'm even going to keep the unit. Right now, I will say this: it looks great. It looks factory correct. It looks period correct. It has Bluetooth. I've tested the Bluetooth both in terms of listening and in terms of having a conversation on the phone, and I'm able to do speech to text as well while I'm driving with it. So it works for all three of those things, which is a win. And it sounds pretty decent. Even though it doesn't have a lot of EQ ability, it does have a separate bass and volume control, and there are separate EQ presets that you can set independently of the bass and volume control. So you can get a scoop with the rock EQ, you can get the mid-range hump with the jazz. I actually have mine set to the flat EQ, which incidentally sounds different from having no EQ turned on. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. I think maybe it's just a slight across the board. I would guess it's probably like a 5 dB or a 6 dB bump all across the board, but it sounds all right. And I use that with a little bit. I leave my bass flat because I've got a subwoofer in the back, and I bump the treble circuit up, and it works nicely. The other thing that's kind of nice is I like to use my MFA display to keep the oil temperature on at all times while I'm driving, because VR6s are hot, and that's a great indicator if something is wrong. So on this, even though I'm going to go ahead and switch that to my Bluetooth again, and I'll just turn down the volume. I can change the display to be a simple clock as soon as the volume goes away. Yeah, so it'll say Bluetooth, and I've got the time, and that's nice. That works. So all in all, for under $200, I'm pretty happy with this. It did have to come from Europe. It's not available as a US model yet, although Crutchfield, please carry this. This is a great unit. It's way better than your other retro stereo. You only have one that you're offering right now. This is far superior. It's actually got a volume knob, which a lot of us like to have. Volume knobs are good. Push buttons, not so much. Anyway, that's my opinion. Take it for what it is. I'm going to mess around with this thing a little bit more and then report back as to what I think. But so far, even despite the fact that it is losing the radio presets every time I turn it off, I think it's a win. I think just given my car's wiring history, there may be some wiring weirdness, and that might be why it's losing its radio presets. But it still doesn't explain why it's not losing the Bluetooth presets at the same time. So, mystery. We will investigate, and I'll get back to you.
And on that terrible disappointment, it's time to say goodbye. We'll be back.